Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Legal Tender. I'm back in the building, back in the vault. Pulled out some notes to make a new video. As always, I want to thank everybody for the love and support of the channel. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I really do appreciate it. If you're a fan of numismatics, if you're a fan of paper currency, if you're just getting into the hobby of numismatics, stay rocking with me, stay rocking with the channel. Every Tuesday is Legal Tender Tuesday, and I'll be making a new episode every week speaking about something new, different, or interesting within the realm of numismatics. If you have any questions, comments, or input, put it down in the comment section. I read everything and I'll respond back as soon as possible. Throughout the video, if you hear something that isn't 100% accurate or it's a little different from the information that you know, let me know via the comments. I'll go back, hit the books, and make sure that I have the right information moving forward. All right, so with that being said, let's get into today's episode. Okay, so today, the notes that I pulled out a complete set. And the set that I pulled out is a complete set of 1934 colorized numerals. But before I get into it, let me go on and preface that by saying that I got some lighting issues going on. I had this ring light, but the bulb done blow, so I got to replace that. So I got this glare that I really don't like, and I'm working on a way to, there we go. See that right there? I don't like that. So I'm gonna be angling these notes a certain kind of way. So bear with me until I get my lighting situated. All right, so disclaimer. All right, so let's get it. All right, so this is a complete set of 1934 colorized numerals. It's not a complete series because a series would be something like 1934A, 1934B, so on and so forth. But I don't got all that. But what I do have every denomination that was printed in this series. And by that, I mean, we have starting off with a $1 note, got a $5 note, and we got a $10 note. All right, so these notes are all silver certificates, and not usually, you can identify that with the blue numeral. Sometimes silver certificates can be a little deceptive because you'll think with I used to go with saying with a blue Treasury seal and a blue serial number, that will identify that it's a silver certificate, but that's not always the case because there are two notes that are emergency currency that are silver certificates that got different color seals. You have the emergency currency. The North Africa emergency currency has a yellow Treasury seal, but it's a silver certificate. And then you have the Hawaii overprint that has a brown Treasury seal that is also a silver certificate. So not all silver certificates have blue seals, so be mindful of that. But all of these are. So we got the blue seal, blue serial, silver certificate. Same thing for the 5. Boom, boom, boom. And now let's transition up to the 10. Blue, blue, silver certificate. Okay, so all right, all three of these notes are silver certificates. Silver certificates, small size, have been printed from 1928 until 1964 with the following denominations. We got 1, 5, and a 10. And these three denominations are the only denominations that were printed in silver certificates. The series years are, you can find a series year in 2 locations. You can find it at the bottom right of the portrait and at the top left of the portrait. And this $1 note is series year 1934. So this was printed. It has a print run from 1934 for the $1 note. For the $5 note, it was printed from 1934 until 1934D. We got a 1934A right here. And on the $10 note, same thing. It was printed from 1934 until 1934D. That's the series. The signatures are in the same location. You can find the Treasurer of the United States to the left of the portrait and the Secretary of Treasury to the right of the portrait. And on the $1 note, you will have the signatures of Julian and Morgenthau. Julian right here, Morgenthau right there. For the $5 note, since it has a few more series years, there are more signatures on it. And for 1934 to 1934A, you have the signatures of Julian and Morgenthau. 1934B, it'll be Julian and Vinson. 34C, Julian and Schneider. And for 1934D, Clark and Snyder. On the $10 note, the exact same thing. 34 to 34A, Julian and Morgenthau. 34B, Julian and Vinson. 1934C, Julian and Schneider. And 1934D, Clark and Snyder. Down there. And the same is, you'll find the same signatures for all Muir notes that was printed during the run of these silver certificates, because from what I'm researching, it was quite a few Muir notes printed during that time. So, speaking about these silver certificates, all right, so silver certificates are now obsolete and have been abolished due to the act on June 4th, 1963. And that is a bill that was signed by President John F. Kennedy. It signaled the gradual elimination of silver backing from U.S. paper currency and marked an end to policies adopted in 1933 when the federal government began to subsidize the silver miners. This was one of the last presidential executive orders signed by President Kennedy before his assassination. It was 197 out of 214 executive orders given. Okay, so on June 24th, 1968, by Congressional Act, the Treasury halted the practice of redeeming silver certificates with silver bullion. All right, so speaking about redemption clauses. All right, so touching on obligations a little bit, and I got an episode speaking about obligations, the purpose of an obligation, and the overall evolution of the obligation and the differences based on currency type, the obligation that was tied to the note. And the obligation can be, it's all of the wording that's on a note, on the obverse side of a note. So up top, down here, and right here. And the obligation states, so it says, all right, this certifies that there is on deposit in the Treasury of the United States of America $5 in silver payable to the bearer on demand. This certificate is legal tender for all debts, public and private. So this is the obligation right here. And what an obligation is a legally binding contract from the government to the individual of this note. And what it means is that you could take this note to the Treasury and there is X amount of silver on reserve. So you could go to a Treasury and exchange this note for 5 silver pieces. But because of the act on June 24th, 1968, the Treasury no longer had to abide by that obligation. Now you could still have this silver certificate exchanged for a Federal Reserve note, but them redeeming it for silver, the Treasury building redeeming this note or exchanging this note for silver bullion was no longer a thing. So, and that all happened on June 24th, 1968. All right. So let's speak about some more literature on notes. All right, so and also I have a couple different silver certificates, and I'm gonna just show the difference in the design and the literature on both notes. All right, so well on all the notes that I got. I'll do a little quick flash right fast. So, all right, we started off with this numeral note right here, right? We see what it looked like. And the major feature that stands out is this blue numeral right there. So let's look at this note right here. No blue numeral, but it has the Treasury seal right there. And let's look at the series year. It is a series year of 1928. So this is the first year that these small size notes got printed. Now let's look at another note. All right, so there's a numeral, but it's not colorized. And now we got the Treasury seal on the right side. And I bring them all up, and this is a series year 1935. And I pull all three notes up just so that you can see the difference on the obverse. This lighting is bananas. I think I know what it is. Them blinds. I'm gonna close them blinds. So that is the difference. And some other differences are in regards to the literature. Let's speak about the motto that is on the back of these notes. All right, so the motto, "In God We Trust," appears on the reverse of the $1 note. And that started with series year 1935G. So what we have a 1935G right here. And they said that the 1935G series is the first series year that the "In God We Trust" motto was added to the note. But also you will have some 1934Gs that don't have the motto as well. So we got a 1935G. Flipping it over. What's missing? The "In God We Trust." So they say this is what they call a godless note because it does not have the motto "In God We Trust." Even though they said that the 1935G series is when the "In God We Trust" motto was added. But you may find some notes of the same series year that does not have the "In God We Trust" motto on the back. I forget where I heard this or where I looked it up at, but I looked it up somewhere and it said that the "In God We Trust" motto started with the 1935H series year. So you could find some with the motto and some without, but it was a series year of 1935H. And I forget where I seen it at, but I seen it somewhere. But the information that I'm reading from right now states that it started with the 1935G series. As we see that on this 1935H, we got the motto right there. So I'm on a hunt for both notes. I'm looking for a 1935G with the motto and a 1935H without the motto, just in case, just to see which one I could find. So we got the God note, and got the godless note. That's a lot of lights, a lot of glare in here. I'm gonna fix that. 35G and 35H. One godless and one without. Well, one godless and one God note. All right, so speaking of obligations, going back to the very first note of the series year, when the Bureau of Engraving and Printing reduced the size, and that is with a 1928 series. Got the obligation right here. Like I said, the obligation is everything that's written. And this obligation right here states that this certificate is receivable for all public dues, and when so received may be reissued. And like I said, my previous episode, I explained what all that means. So if someone has a debt with you, you can receive this note to settle that debt, and you can also reissue it to someone if you acquired a debt with another individual. So this isn't like a one-time use note. That's why it was put right there, that you could receive this to settle a debt, or you could you could reissue it to resolve a debt that you incurred. And that is the obligation on series year 1928. The next note is 1934, where they changed the obligation. I do not have a 1934. The closest I got is a 1935. And we see that the obligation is different. It just reads that this certificate is legal tender for all debts, public and private. So it's already implied that this isn't a one-time use note. So they changed the obligation. And they changed it again one more time, and they changed it on series year 1963, series B. I don't got one of those notes, but it states that this note legal tender for all debts, public and private. Now the key word on the other one, it says that this note. On this 35 series, it says that this certificate. And the reason that they changed the wording on a 1963 series B to where it reads this note legal tender for all debts, public and private, is they was making a transition from calling all currencies notes. Well, correction, they was transitioning from calling all currencies certificates to calling them notes. So that's why you got Federal Reserve notes. Well, other than that, that's it. But that's the transition that they was making, because all currency started off with silver certificates, and then it was United States notes, then gold certificates, national currency, and now we have Federal Reserve notes. So they were just making that transition from calling currency certificates to notes, and that's why the wording is as such. This note legal tender for all debts, public and private. Oh man, I done had better episodes. Work on your lighting. All right, so continuing on. All right, so during the tenure of Julian and Morgenthau, a different type of paper was used as part of the $1 note series of 1935A. And R and S was used as control letters and were surcharged in red on the obverse of the note, and those are called experimental notes. So I got an episode speaking about experimental notes, and the surcharge of the R and S would be found right here, not on the same note, because one note I have an R and another note I have an S. So to learn a little bit more about that, go back to my previous episodes, and it is experimental notes. So check that out. Oh, and those are silver certificates as well. All right, so now we have fun facts. So let's get into the fun facts. All right, so although these notes right here, although these colorized numerals are designated series 1928, they were actually printed April 1933 until 1935. I don't know if that makes them the shortest lived printed notes. I don't think so. But these numerals had a short shelf life, being printed from April 1933 until 1935. And another fun fact, if you look at the reverse of the note, it's different. Somebody even say this looks funny, because these notes are called funny backs, and they're called funny backs because of the overall design is so radically different from other notes that they earned the nickname Funnybacks. And you see, we do not have "In God We Trust" on it either. But, so, okay, look at this one. Okay, we got a funny back, and we have a traditional note. And then we have a "In God We Trust." All right, and did you know that on July 11th, 1955, Congress passed H.R. 619, which mandated "In God We Trust" be added on all U.S. currency. The first paper money to include "In God We Trust" was printed in 1957. All right, so this was printed in 1957, even though it has a series year of 1935H. That may sound weird, but I got another episode speaking about series years. So the series year doesn't mean that that was the year the note was printed. It is the year that the design for the note was adopted. So to get a better understanding of that, go back to my previous episodes and check that out. So got a lot of episodes to go back to check out if you want to know a little bit more about different stuff. All right. I'm gonna work on these lights. I don't like the lighting. I'm gonna fix it. But that's all we got. Until next time, keep it legal, keep it tender. Talk to you soon.